So this week's episode of Wonder Egg Priority definitely gets the focus on the ACCA'S in the most, nonchalant way possible, because they really weren't all that relevant in the episode, and then by the end, you realize, oh wait, they really are screwing with these girls, but then, wait a second, they also lied to the assistant. So what is their true intentions? And maybe the entire point of the Wonder Egg project here isn't just to make a girl suffer and so they don't know the truth and they don't fight. Maybe their true objective is something along the lines of trying to figure out why characters kill themselves, and maybe their grand ambition is to try to find a way to stop it by using different characters as scapegoats or lab rats, so to speak. Though we do gotta jump into the whole idea of the recap last week, which is officially labeled Episode 8, and by the looks of it, that was never planned. I think it was Rika's voice actress. It was one of the main girl's voice actresses. I know when Episode 8 was supposed to drop, they were basically saying that they were going to Nehru's home, and then they had to retract that statement because they didn't know there was a recap. So the fact that they labeled it an official Episode 8, and now we're in Episode 9, out of a 12 episode season, and by the looks of it, it was always originally supposed to be 12 official episodes. I have a feeling we're going to get something very similar to Kekai Sensen or something, where the official last episode will probably be released with the Blu-rays and DVD releases or something to that nature, because it doesn't feel like this was ever supposed to be 11 episodes plus a recap based on how things were leaked. Obviously, time will tell. Do I think we're going to get the full 12 episodes? Yes, that is my prediction. But to not waste any more time, episode 9 was quite amazing, I have to say. Originally, I wasn't going to get this review up today because I've been rather sick the past couple of days, and I took a long-ass nap, came up, and I said, you know what, Wonder Egg Priority sounds like some good medicine, if I'm being honest, and it definitely was. Nehru's home life and what they were able to do with it, and how she basically has her friend in a kind of test tube chamber where she's alive by a technical standard, but everything about her is literally just, she's a vegetable, there's nothing to it. And the fact that the ACCA'S actually gave the Wonder Egg of her friend so that she could experience with him, at first you're saying, okay, they're clearly bad, because a lot of people have had their suspicions on the ACCA'S, that they're evil, they're gonna go like a Cube route or something like that from Madoka Magica. But by the time you reach the end of the episode where you see that they're working with the assistant, which is, as far as I know, the first time we've ever had real-world implications with these characters working outside of the Wonder Egg world, where they're working with a real person to kind of screw around with Nehru by the looks of it. But when you learn that they actually lied about what they were seeing from them, and the fact that they purposely wanted to give her an egg of her friend so that she could experience maybe the truth, I'm curious if the ACCA'S actually wanted Nehru to push that button and disconnect her friend, or if it really was a lucky coincidence for someone like Nehru. Nonetheless, there definitely is going to be the conspiracy theories rolling. If you wanted me to place money on where I think they're going, based on what we're seeing here, it's not surprising that these girls are being put in life or death situations. The ACCA'S want that, but it almost feels like they're taking what candidates seemingly can go into these worlds and leave unharmed to the best of their ability as a way to explore teenage trauma in hopes to probably prevent other kids from experiencing the same fate. It's almost like having a small group of people fall on the sword so a mass amount don't have to later down the line. But then again, it could just be all for amusement. That's an entire possibility. But based on how heavily the idea of trauma is linked up to every bit of story, from personal stories surrounding these girls to the larger overall themes of what happened to their friends, it feels to me that these characters, these ACCA'S, there's no reason for them to simply do it for amusement. There's a bigger picture here, and if you were to ask me, I definitely think it is going to be something along the lines of using them as a way to explore trauma. Yes, they could probably easily end up getting killed, but it's more for it to progress research in preventing other characters and other kids from having it happen. That's my guess, but then again, it could be completely different, even more wild than that. Only time will tell, but it's really interesting nonetheless. Though Nehru's home life was definitely kind of unexpected. I mean, you start the episode off with this over-exaggerated reaction, and you're expecting some pretty heavy themes, at least I know I was, because you're having all the characters just really shocked as if oh my god, is she going to do something risky in the Wonder Egg worlds, right? What's going to happen? And she just invited them over to their home. It's kind of simple comedy where they've grown so accustomed to how shut off Nehru is as a character that something like inviting them over to her home, it pretty much feels like an alien has abducted the real one and kind of replaced a clone, and they're trying to drag you back to your UFO to kind of probe you or something. This just doesn't make sense. Though you get a lot of information and a lot of building around Nehru's character, the idea that she's brought up how she's a leader of a company and has no parents. That's a pretty big what the hell, that's doesn't make any sense. And then you learn the origins of her birth and how, like, even if she technically knew who her parents were, it would make no sense since they really were just kind of like mixing and matching to create DNA, all things considered. And it's really interesting to see how this idea of her life, it feels like she, out of all the characters, if you were to look at all Central 4, she had the most normality to her life. Outside of the fact that she runs a business, right? But it felt like she was the most normal, the most collected. But when you really take a step back, she kind of felt like she was the one who was the most broken out of the characters. Rika has already kind of like overcame, by the looks of it, her character arc with her family. She still has trauma, but it's not as bad as it once was. Characters like Ai will probably be the last character to overcome her trauma, and someone like Momo we're getting probably next week or the week after by the looks of it. But most likely, this was like Nehru's chance to overcome hers, and by having the characters like all kind of be like, you know, we want to support you, but her just simply saying, I'm going to turn it off because she's not alive, her not giving the actual reasons how, like, her friend doesn't want adults to touch her, that would be a way that pretty much all of them would want to stay there and actually want to support her turning off the life support. But the idea that she said it in such a blunt way, in such a Nehru way, two of them stormed off where I came back to support. It's really interesting how these characters definitely have their fears and their issues, but the way they open up, it almost feels like I is the glue that keeps them all together. And some could argue maybe that's just like the main character syndrome, where the main character is the solution, but we can't deny Ai herself has a lot of trauma that she has to deal with, and most likely all three of these characters are going to be the ones to support her after she supports them. Rika, I feel like we have overcome her main trauma, and I feel like after with Nehru's content here, there still might be something that pops up, but the fact that she did shut it off, and the fact that she left the company by the looks of it, it feels like 2 out of 4 of the cast have overcome the main issues that they have to deal with before we reach the conclusion. Momo, I assume, would be next, because if all 3 of them overcome the main issues with their kind of like problems and their depression and their overall traumas, then they can probably help Ai overcome hers. There's been a lot of hints, and I think you can go back and look at episode 1 as well, that there was some hints that maybe Ai's friend was romantically interested in her. In this episode, Ai saying that she thought the person she was interested in was the teacher, but really it kind of just hints that like maybe she had a crush on Ai, and maybe Ai misinterpreted it, she had misinterpreted Ai, and we're getting closer and closer to the truth of what's happening with her friend. And that's why I feel like the direction they're going is specifically overcoming the main barriers for the other 3, overcoming hers. The last episode probably is where it all kind of comes together and they get to make peace with the dead rather than actually reviving the dead. That's kind of feels like the direction they're going. But I think in terms of just like pure wonder, and I'm not trying to make like a play off the title, like it's just this wondrous episode that makes you say, wow, Wonder Egg priority by having a world where you crack an egg and get to see a dead friend. It could have easily just been like, oh, look at this crazy monster we're fighting. Instead, you still, after 8 official episodes, 9 if you include the recap, it feels like the focus has never been on the supernatural or the wondrous visuals. It's more on these girls and how they explore their depression. And it's really interesting content, I have to say. Yeah, for having 2 weeks now, it took us from episode 7 to 9 to get official episode, 2 weeks. It felt like the wait was worth it. You know the anime is struggling with its production. I think it was episode 7 where pretty much every company in the anime community worked on that episode to some degree. You know this is a strenuous production. But the fact that we can come back after a recap and see an episode like this that still is so visually stunning, the narrative and the writing is still just as, I'd say, masterclass as ever. And you know that we have to get that official episode 12 eventually, because it's not like these episodes are made in a week. They're all kind of like made together. So the fact that they have been working on all this, sure, we may have to probably wait for the final episode. Maybe it'll be a few months, maybe it'll be a few weeks. Maybe they'll just find a way to time slot it in with the actual episode 12 within episode 13. Nonetheless, I don't think this will be a production that doesn't get its conclusion. It's just going to be a messy conclusion in terms of how it airs is most likely what's going to happen. But I mean, Wonder Egg priority based on how much of a passion this is, there's no way this isn't going to have a great final episode, I feel like. It's just a matter of, do we get that final episode soon, or do we have to wait for official Blu-ray releases and something like that? Nonetheless, though, I think this show is going to stick its landing. I just hope there won't be any more bumps along the way to get to that final stopping point. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think, and where do you think it's going to go with the final stretch of the anime? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy and new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.